Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Fierce Honest Hearts. It's 2024. I'm Heidi, and with me is Fadishta, and we're excited to be here. We're excited to be back. And yeah, let's start with a check-in since it's been several weeks. I mean, even though it's what we do as part of our repertoire, but yeah, the last few weeks have been, I would say, overall good for me. I'm in a good place and kind of a mix of a lot of things, but I've been, as I shared with Fidesta, we've had some one-on-one calls, and I shared with her, I've been doing a lot of nesting. So cooking and reorganizing and purging and all the things that I love to do around my house, my home, that just feel really good to me and fill whatever void I might be feeling in the in that time. So enjoying that, appreciating that, and that also what that does for me is it settles me, it grounds me, it earths me, if you will. And yeah, and I would just say overall I feel better about that. This week has been not without its challenges, let me put it that way. I've had some unexpected interruptions, some unexpected expenses, some unexpected communication. And I'm like, okay, so, and I'm noticing myself and being much more aware of myself in this space. And I'm like, okay, how am I handling this? And taking care of myself in the space of how am I handling all these things? Because I'm juggling a lot in my just my life in general, and then these other things that come up unexpectedly, and not allowing myself to get crazed or anxiety ridden about it, but just kind of like, okay, I'm handling this as best I can, and I'm taking care of myself, and I can talk more about that, but I want to, because I feel like I'm bringing that into the new year, so I'm going to stop there. So that's my check-in. I feel like that was a lot, but that's my check-in.
Didn't feel like a lot to me. It felt
Okay.
just right, but thank you. Okay, so I'm hearing for you some unexpected challenges and expenses and nesting. So kind of a mix, right? And I think what I've been holding these days is like holding the paradox, holding it all. Um, and holding that it's all grist for the mill, right? Like uh I was watching a Ram Dass thing yesterday, so that's been on my mind. And we watched like a Krishna Das documentary last night. It was the second time I watched it. It was so good. And he said something about Ram Dass said something about, the highs and the lows are grist for the mill for calling us home. And it really was like, yes, I know that to be true. And I've had my challenges over the holidays. Um, and yet that's the view. That's the view I like to live in best I can, right? Of like, what is this teaching me? How is this growing me? And then, like you said, wow, I would have handled this way differently 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 20 years ago. A little bit of, I think last night, just going, all the stuff that's swirling around is life. And I have done enough work to be able to handle it and handle it well. Doesn't mean that there's not the shaky moments and you've seen me in tears and, you know, that there's not going to be emotions still, or it's not going to feel awkward and hard still. But I'm really just want to acknowledge, like, proud's a weird word, but I'm celebrating myself for the work I've done, because had some of the things that have unfolded even in the last year happened 10 years ago, they would have been dumpster fires instead of um, learning opportunities, you know? And that's a big difference in how peaceful life feels for me, how peaceful I feel. And yeah, I think coming into this new year, and I I was thinking about this morning, was just like, to me, success is really having a calm nervous system with all that happens, right? And even if it escalates, being able to come back down. That's success to me, way more than all the, I don't know, what do they have now? Like fame, power, whatever crap is out there. And that works for some people. But to me, it's like, man, if this is doing really well and can handle and have the fortitude for whatever life throws, like almost anything is figure outable then. And that's creating a sense of peace and safety in my body. So yeah, I know that's sort of vague, but it's like the high view of check-in of, yeah, life feels sweet from this place. And you and I always tell people it takes time to build this. I didn't arrive here overnight. I started my shadow work over 20 years ago. But then there's this place. And I think I've fought hard for this place. I've earned it in some ways. And I don't want to say earned in like a, we can't get there naturally, but to remove a lot of obstacles that I had placed in that in front of me at the time. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's my check-in to start. I know we'll go deeper.
Yeah, lovely. Um, so I'm going to reflect, but also appreciate at the same time
Yeah.
because I'm feeling some resonance with this, and um, the fact that everything is figure outable, that we do share this with our audience. It is right, and some things just take a little bit longer than others. They take
Mhm.
time, and so I think at a subconscious or maybe unconscious level, I have been practicing having more patience with myself for these spaces, for the time it takes for things to evolve or recycle or upcycle or whatever. Um, and and knowing that with the patience that I'm giving myself with that gift comes this balance, comes this resolve, comes this, oh, I'm noticing this. I don't like this. So how can I recalibrate? Where on the scale? Like how can I get to
Mhm.
wherever I need to be on the scale? Um, yeah, I really get that. And that is success. That's huge success. For me, that is way more successful than, and I know these are different categories, but certainly for me, it's much more successful to feel that than it
Mhm.
is to have like more money in the bank or whatever. Because if I'm right with myself, if I'm feeling more, there's an Italian phrase called mina male. It's kind of like, yeah, things are good. Like things are good. Like I'm okay right now.
Come on.
Um, when I feel the mina male, I'm like, ugh,
Mhm.
I exhale, right? And I'm like, oh, okay, then I'm okay right now, and then I can handle the next thing.
Mhm.
So much to that. And that we're
Yeah.
giving that to ourselves and that we're creating it for ourselves by way of moving the obstacles that we've had in our way over the last 20 years or whatever that we've been doing this work. And so you've had your journey, I've had my journey. They've been different, and yet there have been a lot of similarities. But yeah, all of that. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. Thank you for deepening that. And just sort of, it's the promised land, right? And I think why I have more conviction for people doing their trauma work and their integration work and their just unpacking the stuff that's impacted their nervous systems throughout their lives is to get to this place. And this place used to sound like a unicorn to me, right? This place that like Ram Dass talks about or Krishna Das talks about or any real luminary or mentor talks about. It's like, okay, I'm going to try to do the work to get there, but I've never been there.
Right.
And now being there, for however time, because everything's impermanent, but to be like, oh, I get to rest in this inner safety, this inner security, this inner trust, regardless of what happens around me. That's power to me. That's true power. That's soul power. That's like uh, true freedom, right? Because who doesn't know someone with a lot of money who's got a monkey mind, whose relationships are crap, who can be celebrated as the number one employee, but like everything else is in disarray. So like just busting the myth, wealth is great. I have nothing against wealth. But if we're not cultivating inner wealth, what's it all for?
Right. That's such a great question, Fadishta, because you could throw all the money at me in the world, but without this, what I've created for myself, it doesn't mean anything. And so I would feel, I can't really say I can't say I know that I would feel XYZ because I don't know what it's like to be without
Mhm.
this, this richness, this fullness, this heartness that I've created for myself. Without, with or without, like without money, and I'm like, oh, but, and then to have that, like to have something added to it, great, but without it, I don't want to do anything without it. Like,
Yeah.
I know that about myself, and I'm grateful to have that inner, those inner workings. I think I when I it's interesting, what just downloaded for me was when I look, like when a clock worker or a watch person who repairs watches and all the intricacies of the gears and whatnot. And I'm like, yeah, we all have millions of gears that we're trying to integrate and have work better for us. Because we can. We just have to figure it out and get out of our own way. Yeah.
Yeah. And sometimes it's a small tweak, but that allows everything else to move, right? And
Yes.
flow. And I was listening to something of Zach Bush's yesterday, and just mainly the science of like we have 70 trillion cells that are working in concert with each other to support our health. I mean, 70 trillion, my brain can't quite compute.
Yeah.
And he was saying that each one of those cells is listening and observing and adapting in real time to whatever is happening at a millionth of a second, which also my brain can't do.
Oh my gosh.
So
Wow.
at the speed that our cells are adapting to information and our
Yeah.
own chemicals, and I was just like awestruck. First off, 70 trillion cells, and then they're responding in a millionth of a second. I don't even know how to parse that.
No. Right.
I
Yeah.
barely have like a 3-second reflex. Right? So like, and I just was like, this is the other piece of doing the work is there's a spaciousness inside of me that I can be awestruck and in reverence and in um, childlike wonder so much of the time.
Yeah.
And I think more than the average adult. That I can be swimming in this just there's room in here. I think that's what I want to speak to for people who maybe are curious about doing their own work to create such an enormous spaciousness that like life can come in and you can just revel in life. I don't know that I'd want to live. And I do remember what it was like not to have this inner safety
Yeah.
and inner security. You could have given me all the jewels and all the houses and all the yachts in the world, and I was miserable.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, everyone's got to choose their own adventure, but I would not give up this. And like you said, add on to it, sure. But let this go? No, this feels like the most valuable treasure
Yeah.
in life, in my experience. I'll just
Yeah.
speak from my values.
Yeah. For sure.
Yeah.
And, you know, you just mentioned value. It's one of your values, and to heighten that, like I feel like the richest person in the world.
Yeah.
Um, because I am so much in touch with
Mhm.
not only myself and my inner self, but my values and the
Mhm.
importance of my values to me. And that I'm not willing. I'm not willing to forego whatever those are and whatever that means to whoever's observing. Um, I just know that at the end of the day, that is the best thing I can do for myself and the best way that I can take care of myself. Yeah.
Amen. Yeah. And our values are different, you know. For me, it's I highly value my inner peace. Not to say that life won't bring its challenges. I'm not asking for a challenge free life, but the inner peace that comes with having done this much work to hold whatever comes. Um, I value relational skills. I cannot, I can't, I'm clear, and I've gotten very clear recently, even more, that if it's not relational, it's not in alignment for me.
Right.
Can't do it. I can't do it. It's too painful, and there's a level of self betrayal in trying to do it.
Yeah.
Um, and then, yeah, just joy. Joy is a huge value for me. I mean, that's why we still have the Christmas tree up. You know, this thing will become the Lunar New Year tree. The ribbons will be red, and we'll take off the green and gold on things, and it'll be because my honey celebrates, you know, the Chinese New Year. And then it'll be the Valentine's tree. And then somewhere before the Persian New Year, which is the spring equinox, it will become compost for the forest. Um, but we keep, I see so many people, it's like December 26th. And they're like, boom, Christmas is done. We're going to take the tree down. And it's like, but this thing is still
Viable.
green and
Yes.
loving and vibrant and like a presence in our home and like a friend in our home. And yeah, so joy, those are like, and I think, how do I put this? I used to say those things, but make explanations or try to like cushion it around like I wasn't secure in my values. Now I'm like, no, these are it. And
Yeah.
I've collected enough data.
Yeah. Yeah.
These are it, you
Yeah.
know, relationships, values of beauty and joy, and yeah, protecting my peace, but not having to work so hard to protect my peace.
Yeah. Yeah. Beautiful. Mm. So on our call on Monday, it feels like 8 years ago, but on our call, we talked about words that are inspiring for us as we move through 2024. And so I wanted to talk a little bit about that because I touched on that a little bit in my check-in. And I'm like, "Ah, I want to share more about that in this." So a couple things that I've been carrying over for the last several years because they work for me and I just find a deepening in them. And that is that deep awareness. Awareness is so it's gone from awareness to deep awareness, and I'm just going to stay on that trajectory. And courage, and my that was a new one for me last year, even though it's kind of been on the back burner, but it showed up more last year because I really had to go to bat for myself in several
Hmm.
different ways, and I'm like, okay, you're up to bat again, Heidi. What's going to happen in this scenario? That kind of thing. Um, and I don't need to go into detail, but I'm pleased with the way that I trusted myself. And that's another level of courage, in the way that I trusted myself, in the way that my intuition is, I mean, I'm seeing it left and right, and I'm like, things are popping up, and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is so lovely and grand. And it feels it's expansive and like I'm like, oh my gosh. And so when I feel overwhelmed by it, I just sit back and I breathe. I'm like, okay, it's gonna be okay. It's not the end of the world. It's a lot, and you can handle this, Heidi. Like, that's the other thing that I need to keep telling myself, Adishta, is that I can handle this. I got this. I can handle it. So it's all been working in tandem. And then the other thing that I noticed, and I want to share this with anyone who's listening, and with you, my friend, that sometimes we have these words. We've been doing this for a little bit of time and sharing those. And what I want to say about it is that on January 1, I wasn't like, oh, this is going to show up, or I'm allowing it to be organic.
Yeah.
I'm allowing it to show up when it needs to show up. So I'm not consciously thinking about it. It's on the back burner, it's subconscious or in that level somewhere. And so the reason I'm saying this is because one of the things that I wanted to add into my life last year was lowering expectations. And I've reworded that because that I was like, well, I don't know how I feel about those words. So what I've changed it to is accepting and receiving people where they are. So really working hard to allow my expectations to just, not as best as I can, because I'm not perfect, believe it or not. But allowing my expectations to kind of just sit idle and then receive people where they are. And I want to say, I've noticed in the last 2 months or so that has been, I've been much more in that energy. And it feels good. Like for me, it feels like the right thing to do for myself and for the company that I'm with. Um, I feel like I've gone on and on. I will share my new word, but I want to hear from you. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah, no, I appreciate that. Yeah, and you know, I'm thinking of something that was in the documentary last night around like the Great Way. This was like a Chinese proverb. This was like the third patriarch of Zen. So a long, long time ago, and it was like the Great Way, capital G, capital W, is easy as long as you have no preferences.
Oh my God, I love that.
I mean, Zen is so gangster sometimes. It's like, wow, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right?
I
Yeah.
see. I see where the great way would be easy if we're not like preferring someone to show up a certain way or expecting them to and just being like, huh, okay. I'm not going to be in fantasy here. This is what's showing up, right? Yeah. Um, so when we spoke, I had three words come through and I felt a fourth word, but it was like still in the pregnant place, right? Um, and I think one we shared was reverence,
Mm.
reverence to myself, so that I don't deny myself my needs, my desires, my dreams, right? So like a true reverence for even in the moment. Hey, I really want to do this thing, but there's a part of me that's like, oh, should we not? To like just be like, nope, we're gonna trust and have reverence for that part. And then devotion. It's one of my favorite words. My morning meditations, I don't call morning meditations, I call devotionals. Because it's my time with Source, it's my time with me. And devotion feels like a natural consequence of reverence, right? If I have reverence for my partner, my devotion to him is clean and clear. Same with myself, friendships like us, right? It's like devotion feels like an easy next step when I have reverence for things. That could be devotion to the earth. I'm looking at ways I can be a more devoted to Mama Gaia and her plight because of us, right? Um, and then rejoice. That one came in loud and clear, like church level choir, rejoice, like rejoice at the beautiful things, rejoice at the cozy, rejoice for the pain. Like it's not all about the confetti.
Right.
It's about the scraped knee, when you fall to the ground when something terrible happens. Like, but like how can I rejoice that I'm living and I'm experiencing life? And that's the whole spectrum of life. So those were the three that came in loud and clear. And then I had a new one show up as I knew it would, that I will save too, because I want to bounce it back to you for your words. And
Oh, that was beautiful, friend. Yeah. So the third, the other word that came through is reverence, like you shared, it was for both of us.
mm,
Um and you had asked me in our conversation on Monday what reverence means to me. And I said, and I think I shared that, on the spectrum of oh my God, what is the word? On the spectrum of when you have deep respect for yourself, there's a word.
mm,
Um, when you're congruent with yourself, when you are in a line, I'm not thinking the word, but anyway. So I'm just going to go on. So when I'm in alignment with myself, there are levels to that.
yeah.
And for me, I would say the 10 is reverence. And for me to always be attaining to that
Mhm.
for myself and allowing it to be what it is, like just like receiving it, accepting it for what it is. Because when I don't, I'm like, even for a nanosecond or something feels a little off,
Mhm.
I know for a fact that I am not in alignment, and I'm incongruent with myself, and I'm done with that. Those days are
Mhm.
over. Like, I'm really
Mhm.
clear about that. And so um there's a deeper respect there for who
Good.
I am,
Yeah.
and so not only for who I am, but who I'm in relationship with, and how we show up for each other, how that person shows up for me. Um me is everything. And so yeah, taking that into my, I'm like, oh, that feels big, but taking that into my life, and um noticing and being more aware of how I receive myself in that space and how others relate to me in it. Yeah.
Ooh, wow. Yeah, it feels powerful what you're sharing. And I almost said beautiful, but it's like I'm feeling like I need to take a bigger breath. It's like an expansion
Yeah.
energy to like, what if I have full unapologetic reverence for myself? What does that look like?
Right.
And then I have that for others. How is that gonna, I mean, I would say obviously improve
Yeah.
relationships. And then, yeah, just what's possible. What you had said to me that really stuck with me was um, having reverence at the center of my being.
Mm.
And I was like, oh, okay. That was like chocolate souffle level.
Hmm.
To be like, well, if that's the sun, the orb in the middle of your body, what could go wrong? Like,
Right.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And then the word that came to me, it was actually a phrase, but I said it 2 or 3 times this week and I was like, "Okay, that one's edgy, but okay." Was bold alignment.
Oh.
Because I think I worked on alignment last year, right? And it was more of an inner quiet work. Sometimes it felt seismic, but I also feel like it was a very internalized process. It's something I kept close to myself. And this feels like with that work done, how boldly can I show up in the world, right? Whether that's like the new website, I'm doing a photo shoot, hoping to put together a podcast. Like it's less the things though. This has been what's been most interesting is like if none of those things happen, I don't even care. It's how do I show up millisecond by millisecond as the person, the spirit, the soul that I am, I don't even say regardless, but like, oh, what's the feeling? It's like so often I've had the am I allowed to do that
Um,
come up, which I'm
Yeah.
shutting, or is that impolite, right? These are some conditionings that I've had to work with. Where like I wanted to put a post up today that was sort of like, um, if you don't work on your childhood wounds, your relationship will.
Okay.
Right? And that feels edgy to me, but true.
Yeah.
And in the past, I would have had to articulate and explain like why that's true and blah blah blah. And I just want to write like fuck around and find out, homies. Like good luck. Like you're gonna find out after the honeymoon phase, right? I think there's a little instigator in me that is true to my nature that I've kept under wraps, you know? That would be like, call me after the honeymoon phase, because I know this to be true. It's almost like standing in my wisdom in such a, for me, because obviously there's so many ethoses out there, but in what I believe to be true, in a way that's like, I guess unapologetic. I wish there was a better word because that feels like it has a weird tone to it to me, but like, it's just like, boom, here I am. And here's what I believe in. So conviction.
Ooh, yeah.
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 Yeah. Maybe it might switch from bold alignment to conviction because that one's feeling like in the
I,
pocket for me.
yes, yes.
Yeah.
I feel, if it's okay that yeah,
Please. Yeah.
yeah. So bold alignment and conviction, I'm like the C word, like
Conviction.
conviction, 100%. It just, there's something about that word, conviction. It has
Mhm.
I don't know. It has something, there's something in the way that the word sounds. I love phonetics, by the way. I love phonetics, and there's something about the sound of that word that I'm like, oh yeah, like not stick it to them, but like, yes, this is, yeah, I'm more myself. I'm sharing more of who I am. And also, it's interesting that I didn't know that, maybe I knew you struggle with that, but I think probably most women did. So at the end of our circle call a couple weeks ago, I had I had shared something at the very end, and it was about women, and I know a lot of humans struggle with this, but I think it's more true for women. We struggle to give ourselves permission to do things, to say things, to be who we are. And when you share that with me, I'm like, that doesn't sound edgy to me.
Hmm.
It sounds like truth.
Yeah.
And it feels it. It might feel a little edgy, but I'm like, people need to know this stuff.
Mhm.
They really need to know this stuff. I think it's really important. And I'm glad that you're bringing it to the forefront because let me tell you, a lot of people are sitting in the dark thinking that the honeymoon stage will never be over. And I'm like, hello, it's going to be over before you know it. It just will. Like,
6 months to 18 months, but then you've got
or,
real work to do.
or shorter.
Or 2 months.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then after one notices that the honeymoon stage is changing and reality is setting in, that's another reason to give ourselves permission and to have more conviction for ourselves.
Mhm, mhm.
Because our person, whoever that person is, how are we showing up in the relationship, in the friendship, in the situation, and how are we not? And what are we giving ourselves permission for and
Totally.
not, right? Like all these things need to
Yeah.
be looked at. They're really important.
Yeah. And the conviction comes from care. So that's why I can really stand in it because listen, like Richard and I have been together almost 8 years, right? But our first year and a half was the honeymoon phase. The first
Yeah,
year was the honeymoon phase. And I thought, oh, I'm frolicking. Here's my person. And then we hit the challenge phase
yeah,
and we broke up, right? And that's when I sat in I don't know, the shattered debris of our breakup and was like, I was never taught how to, I was taught how to get the guy. I was never taught how to hold the frequency of love in a relationship no matter what. Right. And so I felt really unprepared by the world, by society, by the education system, whatever you want to call it. So there's a conviction there of like, why lose your most treasured relationship when you could learn the skills? And they really are skills,
Right.
right? If people are willing, and I'm going to say able, because there's also that level, but most people are able if they're willing.
Yeah.
I just don't want anyone to have to lose and go through the heartache if they could just skill up. I mean, yeah. And I think that's what's coming up for me is I've done enough of this work. I've helped enough people to be like, this prototype works, right? So now let's really shout it from the mountaintops.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm.
And again, like I said before, that kind of meme would have felt edgy to put up, even though I know it's true. I wouldn't have wanted to rock the boat. And then I probably would have put some academic explanation, because that's my little safety net, versus just being like, fuck around and find out. Like, you're going to see.
Yeah.
And when you see, call me because it's also figure outable.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It
Mm.
feels more like me, but me, I'm learning is like part like humor and play and like a little bit I want to say almost like Beastie Boys, but I don't know what I'm trying to say. It's quite more forward than I present. So I'm excited to step into that. I don't feel like I'm trying to embody something new. It's like I'm embodying something I do when no one's looking.
Yeah. Yeah.
I know.
I have a follow-up question.
Sure.
As you can probably guess, how does it feel? First of all, how does it feel to be embodying that? And then how does it feel to say it out loud? To like to be admitting it and saying like this is who I am.
There's a lot of eek in that, like eek,
Okay.
right? But I think I've chipped away at enough of the what will people think, because if they're not my people, then they're not my people. They'll
Yeah.
find some other, relationship expert. Um, it feels like I can drop my shoulders, expand my heart, and have my back. Like it feels really good to be like, this is who I am, and I kind of tuck this in. Um, because it might be too much. It might be too in your face. It might be too bold. It might be too intense. And it's like, but that's me. And I'm cute about it, but I'm intense, And so I think I'm mostly excited because tucking it in takes energy. Tucking it in and being an academic who explains the neuroscience and I geek out on that stuff. So it's exciting too. But at the same time, I'm holding something down
Yeah.
that's a little more, yeah, bold, for lack of a better word. You know? Yeah, yeah. Feels good not to hold down something that is a part of me.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's an essential part of me. Because if you see me in the house, I'm here with you and I'm like this, but sometimes I have thoughts and I'm like, ooh, can I say that? And I'm like, now I'm like, yes, say that. Say that. If it's true, say it.
Yeah.
Right? And I agree with you. I think women are conditioned to hold back, and men are conditioned in other ways that are painful too. But to hold back being bold and unapologetic and, you know, that women are, I don't even know how to put it, but there's an unspoken don't be too bold in our society
Hmm. Hmm.
with women, less with men.
Yeah.
Men can be bold and leaders and speak up and say crazy ass shit as we've seen. But we need some bold humans out in the world right now. Yeah. Thanks for asking.
Well,
I feel more excited and giddy the more I name it.
yeah.
Mm.
And I think you'll also notice the more you speak it, the more comfortable you are with it. Yeah.
Mm. And then the people who resonate with that can show up and find me instead
Yeah.
of it being like this little thing that only my inner circle sees.
Right.
Yeah.
That's some exciting stuff on the horizon.
Yeah, thanks,
I love
friend.
it.
And I
Yeah.
want to bounce back to you. Did you have a new word come through? Is that kind of what I heard? Or were these the ones that have been sitting with you?
Well, the deep awareness and courage, and then receiving people. So I wanted to add to the receiving people where they are in their lives and acceptance. And that for sure is connecting to me and
Mhm.
allowing myself to receive myself as I am. So as you talk about conviction and being more bold, and I'm like, yeah. And what else can I bring in where I'm receiving all of me instead of, because I think as women, as humans, we hide a lot. We have things that we're like, oh, I don't know, blah blah blah. And there are things that I'm more bold about than other things. And sometimes I'm just like, in this moment, I cannot give a shit. I have to say these, I have to say this or whatever. And then there are times when I'm like, oof, I don't know, right? It feels really risky or dicey or, oh, you know. Um, and I think I've shared this before, but my mother, when I was growing up, because I was the one who would kick the elephant in the room in the butt, like to kind of stir things up a little bit. And my mother, she was like, you like to rock the boat. Like it was a bad thing. And I'm like, actually, I like telling the truth.
Mhm.
That's very different than rocking the boat. If it rocks the boat, okay. But I'm
Mhm.
more apt to tell the truth because I want the truth. I want the truth. And and I will say in our society, and that's it's a general statement, but so many people are comfortable just sitting with the mediocre, with, oh, let's not talk about that. We can talk about this part of it, but we're not going to bring the whole thing in.
Mhm.
I'm calling bullshit. I'm going
Mhm.
to call big bullshit on that because you're never going to get to, I will never get to where I need to get unless I bring it all up, unless I unfurl everything. And so to receive myself, to hold myself, to accept myself in that place, I'm like, I feel like that's the end all.
Mhm.
What else do I need? You know, like what else do I want in this moment? What else do I need and what do I want? Um, Easier said than done. Al- Always a practice, but having more awareness around it is, I think, key. Because if I notice it, I can't ignore it anymore.
Mhm.
Right.
It's
Yeah.
in there. Yeah, and I share that with you. I resonate with that. And I wonder, for so many of us, and I'm curious for you, if everyone in your family ignored the big ass elephant in the room and you did probably the most healthy thing, just be like, anybody else seen that? And then got poo pooed for it on some level, right? Like, what a confusing element
So confusing.
to work with because it's like your instincts were healthy,
Yeah.
right? Like, if there was literally an elephant in the dining room
Right.
and no one was talking about it, it would be crazy making. There's a gorilla throwing shit all over your kitchen, and everyone was like,
Right.
So why is it any different when it's emotional or spiritual or psychological? Feels like people get it when it's physical.
Yes.
If I told you there was a raccoon in your bedroom right now, right?
Yes.
You'd want to address it.
Yeah.
So my follow-up question is what do you imagine has people do it different when it's emotional and not physical?
The immediate answer, the immediate response that's coming to me is they're scared, and they're scared of their own emotions,
Hmm. Yeah, yeah,
right?
I can see that.
So, yeah, so when there's an issue, whatever the issue is, when there's an issue, um, and nobody's talking about it, I think one thing to look at is why is nobody talking about it? What's happening when someone even considers having that conversation or beginning the conversation or asking a question, right? Hmm. Probably a little fear
For a lot.
or a lot of fear, right? Um, and what else with that question? What else is going to come up? Because it's never just one thing. It's probably a bevy and layers of a lot of shit. Like we're talking about, the gorilla throwing shit in the kitchen. There's a lot of shit that comes with an elephant. They're big animals, right? Like, so imagine it's not just an animal in your living room, but it's everything that comes with it. So there's a lot to it. And so, um, have the courage to be the person that tells the truth, that addresses the truth, that wants things to be better because we know that, yeah, there's a lot to get through, but then to get to the end, or at least the beginning of the end,
Yeah.
that's huge. And
And
there's
it's
so much,
freeing.
it's very freeing, and there's so much repair that can be done in those instances, in those situations. And so, yeah, courage is online. Courage is huge online for me. Yeah.
Wow. Thank you, friend.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're
Very
welcome.
illuminating, right? It's like I watch someone like have a bee near them and they're doing everything they can to get away from the bee or acknowledge the bee and whatever. And then it's like, huh, they won't do this in their inner life and in their emotional life. And humans are funny that way.
Yeah.
And I get that the physical is easier, right? Um, but I want us to almost bridge the gap between how we would handle a physical elephant in the living room with how we would handle an emotional elephant.
Yeah.
That gap needs to be bridged.
It definitely needs to be bridged. And the other thing that I want to add to this Finishta is that once we start that conversation, it's the anticipation. I will say it's the anticipation that most people are scared of, rather than the doing. Like, because once the questions, once the interest starts percolating, ah, it's interesting. This is fascinating. Let's have a conversation. But I think it's the start of the beginning, the consideration of, oh my God, who's going to ask that question? Who's going to broach that topic? Whatever. That's scary as hell. And I get it.
Right.
And it's not as hard as we think it is. We, in our heads, we're thinking, oh, this is so hard. Actually, it's probably, I would even consider saying easier than trying to move a freaking elephant out of our living room. Right?
We're trying to put like, I don't know, a curtain over the elephant
Oh my
and then
God. Yeah.
eating, yeah. I
Yeah.
think it'd be cool to do like art projects that look like that, where it's just like a couple having dinner and there's just like an elephant with a blanket over it, and you're like, how's this gonna work long term?
Right.
It doesn't.
It does not work.
Yeah.
Never. It never will work.
I will add to what you said, which I love, is like there's fear and anticipation, but I also think there's fantasy. Like to even think you can walk around a gorilla in your kitchen for years.
And
That's
people do.
fantasy to me.
Yeah. And people do.
People live in fantasy and they go, I don't know, we're not having sex anymore. Hmm,
Huh.
hmm. Might be that gorilla. I don't know. Just a guess.
Right. Yeah.
Like, mm.
Mm, what a rich conversation. This is
Yeah.
lovely. Yay.
Thanks, friend.
Yeah, thanks. Shall we do a card?
We can do a quick one.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. All right,
Okay.
here we go. They have been shuffled. And I'll say no, middle finger, the one
Okay.
that's moving everything.
That one. That
This one?
one. Yep.
Hmm. This is, I guess we'll have to adjust this, but let's say describe our most intimate or surprising experience. Hmm.
Our most interesting or
Intimate or surprising experience.
oh, wow. So so many,
Hmm.
so
Mm-hmm.
many. And I want to say, so I have a twofold answer. So surprising, I'm gonna use that first. Almost, I would say every time we do a podcast, at the end, I'm like, and we both are kind of like, oh my God, this is so rich. It was so good, like all that. And this, of course, is off camera. So, and I don't ever want that to fade. I love the surprise of that, of how it feels in my body. And then the most intimate, I would say, um, I would say in our repairs,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
um, and how as we're working through the crunchy, the messy, whatever it is, how it almost happens. I want to say it happens so beautifully and organically. And what I'm attempting to say here is that as we both are sharing and we're both revealing and that kind of thing, there's this for me. I'm using this metaphor of kind of light at the end of the tunnel. Oh, there it is. Like we're almost there. We're getting there. We're there, and how lovely that feels. And I'm like, oh wow, we just went through this whole thing, and look what can like look what's possible. Yeah, and that feels
Mm.
so tender to me, and I know that without the scaffolding, without the foundation, without the conversations that we have, it would not be possible. So I feel like that's packed, but it's, yeah.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you.
Mm.
Yeah, for me when intimate came up, I thought even like the first time we had conflict, right? Because we didn't quite know how to handle each other yet. We didn't have each other's care instructions. It was like that first conflict is like, how's this gonna go? Could
Yeah.
go many ways. And that the intimate in there was however shaky it felt for me, however shaky it felt for you, that we still showed up shaky because we cared about our relationship. And that, the we, like, oh, we're going to get through this. We're going to get through that tunnel. We're going to get to the other side. That the we was never lost, even when the I was hurt. That's incredible. And that's mastery, right? It's so easy to go into our own corners and get adversarial. And I just remember the whole time it was like, we love each other, we care about each other, we're gonna figure this out, like to as best as we can. And we did. And then I think the surprising was maybe one day you weren't feeling well, maybe early on in our friendship where like you let me in, you were in bed and you're laying down and I just was like, wow, this is like next level um friendship.
Mm.
Because so many people be like, I don't feel well, like, see you later. And to be let in to your world at a time when, it probably didn't feel great. I was really surprised and touched, um, that like that's a different level of trust,
Mm.
that we had built. Yeah. And then since then, that being like you're the person I do go to when I'm having a meltdown, and I feel really held when you're there. So yeah. Yeah.
Thank you, friend. That's
Mm,
lovely. Thank you.
thank you, friend.
Yeah. So to our audience, thank you very much for listening, watching, join us. Hit subscribe on YouTube, it helps us. Send us a comment, like us, whatever capacity you feel led to, and we will welcome to 2024. We're here. We'll keep doing this, and yeah, until next time. Mwah.
Take care.
Bye, everyone.